wabarakatuh, and very good evening. I'm extremely thrilled. I don't expect this kind of crowd. That may explain why Ahmad Maslan decided not to come. And I don't blame Ahmad Maslan because he has been going through a really tough. This week could have been his worst week as an MP, because I don't think in recent memory a deputy minister has to apologize to Dewan Rakyat. This is the first time that we managed to get and corner a deputy minister to admit openly and on record in Dewan Rakyat that he has misled and he has given a wrong fact intentionally, although we didn't pursue the issue further because I think if I were Ahmad Maslan, I'd rather be referred to the committee rather than have to apologize publicly in the House. The fact that he had done that, I think that's enough humiliation. So be gentle on him. Tun Mahathir actually, his office acknowledged the receipt of our invitation, but did not confirm whether he was coming or not. And it was very rare that myself or Tony Pua agree with Tun Mahathir. But I think when it comes to 1MDB, it's not difficult to find the majority of Malaysians agreeing with us. I'm sure there will be only like 20 or 30 people who agree with Najib and Rosmah with this one. The rest of Malaysia actually agree with us. I know that Tun has been very vocal against 1MDB, although I can imagine how Najib would have looked at it, because throughout the 22 years of Tun Mahathir's premiership, I think he clocked in as much debt and scandal as Najib is doing. And I think if you look at the financial amount, Mahathir's track record was quite impressive as well. 30 billion foreign exchange loss in 91-92, Maminko in 85, and I think if you add up all those, I think Tun Mahathir is still a bit ahead of Najib. So, but Najib is catching up. And hence why we end up with 1MDB tonight. As Cynthia says, it's not nice to always be dragged into scandal. The only consolation I have is not my scandal, you know. But 1MDB is not just about juicy stories. I think this is a serious stuff, because the amount, the quantum, and the audacity of the Prime Minister and a select few people around him to drag the country into this kind of financial liability is something that we had not seen for many years. So let me begin. I've discussed with Tony what we would do tonight is that I'll give an overview about what are the issues, what were the backgrounds, who are the people involved, while Tony will go into the details of the transactions and the deals that they have made. 1MDB started out I think in between 2008 and 2009 as Terengganu Investment Authority, TIA. As always, in the way that UMNO and Barisan Nasional works, is about the cable that you have. The bigger the cable, then the more money that you can propose. Somehow, whoever this Jolo is, he certainly has a very big cable, because rumors going around, and this is Malaysia, rumors is usually true. Rumors going around was that the idea was basically hatched by Jolo and was presented to the government of Terengganu, the state government of Terengganu, to have a sovereign fund, so to speak, backed by the petroleum royalty of Terengganu. Basically, Terengganu will be receiving about 1 to 2 billion a year from petroleum royalty. So, all these rich kids from Wharton suddenly thinks that, it's better that you borrow now, you can get 30, 40 billion, because you will be able to raise that kind of money from the market, because you have the 1 and 2 billion every year coming as petroleum revenue. Hence why 1MDB started off as Terengganu Investment Authority in 2008 and 2009. I think the Terengganu government, to their credit, and it's astounding because the chief minister at that time was Ahmad Said. He's my neighbor and he's not extremely smart. But when it comes to this, I think maybe because he doesn't understand anything about these things that Jolo proposed, for whatever reasons, Terengganu state government had cold feet. They felt that it's too risky for them to pack and they have to decouple this whole sovereign fund for Terengganu with the annual petroleum income. So the deal didn't go through. There was no bond or debt raised by Terengganu Investment Authority. But yet again, as a measure and proof of the kind of cable that Jolo had, lo and behold, the whole Terengganu Investment Authority that was set up at that time was acquired and became a wholly owned subsidiary of the Ministry of Finance. And the name was changed to 1MDB. I'm sure Najib was very happy at that time because it was at a pitch fever of One Malaysia and so on, and he could announce, here we have a sovereign fund, One Malaysia Development Berhad. I'm sure if he can travel back in time, he would have never named it 1MDB, he would have named it something else. Then of course, there's a series of deals that Tony will explain. 1MDB was then presented to the public as a second sovereign fund for the country. Okay, this is where I think I totally agree with Tun Mahathir in his most cynical and sarcastic way of commenting about 1MDB. You have a sovereign fund, money that you need to invest. Norway does that. Norway has the heritage fund. Other countries do that. But 1MDB is the other way around. It started with a very small share capital, and then because of the government guarantees that it keeps getting from federal government, it went ahead and continuously issued bonds after bonds to get the cash and working capital. Of course, by now, a lot of you in this room would have understood that as of 31st March 2014, the total debt of 1MDB had reached 42 billion ringgit. And I think apart from federal government and Petronas, I think that's the largest debt of any organization in this country. Even at the beginning, in 2009 and 2010, some of the very key questions have been asked. Number one was, why was the need for a second sovereign fund? We already have a so-called sovereign fund or national investment company in the form of Khazanah. And to be fair to Khazanah, I think it was not doing too badly. Apart from Mas, the Mas fiasco and so on, others were giving reasonable returns. So we have always argued from the very beginning, if there is a need to focus or expose government's exposure to so-called sovereign fund, we should have worked on Khazanah, because Khazanah has been there for 10 years by then. Khazanah has developed some traction and some track record. Whatever was wrong with Khazanah, you need to focus on Khazanah. And more so because Khazanah was more like a strategic investment holding company owned by the government. It's not really a sovereign fund that has money and be reinvested all over the world. So there's already a big question mark about whether do we need a sovereign fund. And even if we need a sovereign fund, a fund managed in such a way, certainly we didn't have the money to have such a sovereign fund. But of course, in between 2010 And 2013, there was no answer whatsoever coming from UMNO Barisan Nasional. The Prime Minister has kept very quiet, and I think even more so in 1MDB, because he has to refer to the real chairman of the board, which is the wife. So there's hardly have been any information coming from authority, let alone 1MDB, for the last 4 years. It's only lately that when things started to go down, and I think a lot of people as well continue to provide information to myself and Tony, whistleblowers continue to come. It sheds more light about what is happening within 1MDB. Alright. I want to focus on 2 or 3 things why 1MDB is a national crisis. You know, chasing Shahrizad and the condos were fun. Because it's only 250 million. You know, it's not scary, whatever it was. Yeah lah, okay lah. You know, it was obscene, 250 million. But it wouldn't have bankrupted the country. It wouldn't have altered the way federal government would have functioned without that 250 million. That's not the case with 1MDB. If something happens to 1MDB, it is a national crisis. Not only the amount of 42 billion or whatever exposure that the federal government is facing, but it might trigger a run of our economy. You know, if federal government have to step in and pay for a certain amount of debts, the market will start asking, will start be wondering the ability of the federal government to pay the rest of the federal debts. So there is a real fear that 1MDB can really mess things up economically for us. And that's why I think Tony, myself, and a few others have really been consistently hammering at 1MDB, although we didn't get much traction in the last 1 year. Now, what kind of financial exposure? The last financial reports, financial statements, which took ages for the auditors to sign off. I'm sure there might be some auditors here. I think only PwC which have not tried. I think KPMG, Ernst & Young, and Deloitte have all gone in and have trouble. So let's see whether the next one is KPMG that are brought in. Next one is what is it? PwC, yeah. So all the big 4, the 3 have all gone in and angkat tangan surrender. Let's see how PwC will do it. You know, it took ages for them to file. But the financial liabilities were staggering. The loan amounted to 42 billion ringgit. Out of that 42 billion ringgit, what we have ascertained so far, 20 billion, or I will explain a bit more about the 4 billion loan given by Kumpulan Wang Amanah Pension, which is, this one's the kampung folks, the Malay kampung folks, will understand it as much as they understand the Lembu. You know, if you go and talk about 1MDB and so on, it's quite difficult to explain. But, you know, luckily or unluckily for us, Najib decided to take 4 billion from Kumpulan Wang Amanah Pension, which is the National Pension Fund. You talk about the pension fund has been dragged into this. I think the traction is certainly a lot bigger than the urban. So there's out of that 42 billion financial liability for 2014 at 31st March 2014. At least we have established so far 20 billion will pose a financial guarantee or risk one way or another, whether it's implicit or explicit, whether it is called letter of guarantee, letter of support, or love letter, it doesn't matter. It has severe financial repercussions on federal government. The first 5.8 billion ringgit, which was issued for the first working capital in 2009, that was explicitly guaranteed by federal government. And then in 2011 and 2012, a little known small company, which was a subsidiary of 1MDB then, by the name of SRC International, was given 4 billion ringgit facility from kumpulan wang amanah pension. Now, I saw in Twitter and so on, a lot of these UMNO machais are complaining that I made up this kumpulan wang amanah pension. They say, oh, there's only EPF. What is this kumpulan wang amanah pension? They should go and read a bit more. In Malaysia, the pension fund for the future is managed by a statutory body called Kumpulan Wang Amanah Pension, in the same way that retirement benefit for private sector is managed by the EPF. EPF manages the gratuity payment for the private sector. There's one body which is not as widely known by the public by the name of Kumpulan Wang Amanah Pension, which manages the savings and the cash flow for future liability of pension of mostly civil servants. You know, in 2011, Kumpulan Wang Amanah Pension, and guaranteed by the federal government, had given a 4 billion facility to 1MDB. They have drawn down 2 billion ringgit. Okay, this is the best part. Reports whether by The Age, by the Business Time, by even New York Times, everyone is looking at 1MDB now. Reports have cited that the proposal submitted to the federal government, Najib basically, in order to get that 4 billion, was to set up a strategic company that can look after the national interest in energy. 1MDB argued that the country requires an energy strategic investment company. Hence, they needed 4 billion. What was the ventures that they proposed to utilize that 4 billion? Okay, some of you could have known this, but a lot of you could have missed the details altogether. When they asked for that 4 billion ringgit from the pension fund, 1MDB proposed to buy a mining company from Mongolia. I really don't understand this obsession with Mongolia. There's a Gobi mining company, you know, Gobi Desert something. So they were arguing that they needed, Malaysia needed a strategic energy company that can have huge influence in coal mining, and wait for it, in uranium. Tell me, why do we need uranium? But that was the reason given and submitted to the government, and with the kind of cabinet that we have, the government approved it, and therefore 4 billion of the pension fund has been extended as facility and 2 billion has been drawn down, you know. So that was exposure. I'm sure if Ahmad Maslan is here, he's about this height. I make fun of this all the time. He basically stands right across of me in Parliament, so we always have these exchanges of words. You know, if Ahmad Maslan is here, he would have argued that that 4 billion is no longer a liability, because after the failure of the Mongolian venture, we were told until today there is no Mongolian mines. So the Ministry of Finance have decided to acquire the whole company, and the liability now is federal government's liability. Now, I don't care whether it is parked under federal government's balance sheet or whether it's 1MDB. What we are saying is that 4 billion ringgit has been extended to 1MDB, and I think that the 2 billion drawn down is lost somewhere in Mongolia. And now, because 1MDB certainly cannot service that debts to pension, then it has to be reacquired and parked under Ministry of Finance. Someone has to pay that 4 billion. Who is going to pay that 4 billion? Not Rosmah, definitely. You know, you and I and Petronas and all the national treasury. So that's 5.8 billion that was first guaranteed for the first tranche of the debt issued, plus the 4 billion given to SRC International. So that's already about 10 billion. Okay. And then, of course, in the last 1 month, we've been arguing about this 9.7 billion ringgit debt issuance arranged by Goldman Sachs, and all this debate about whether the letter of support constituted a guarantee or not. In 2013, 1MDB issued another set of debt for a 3 billion note USD, which is about 9.7 billion. You all, I'm sure, if you go and access the internet, you will have the full access to the full agreement. The agreement is 140 pages. You go through and read one by one. It's very clear that it is a form of guarantee. It's just not called guarantee, that's all. You know, it's like when Najib gives Bream, he says that this is not corruption, this is me helping you. But it is corruption, basically, you know. So, you know, semantics. So if you take those three debt issuance or debt issues that we have known so far, only three that we have known, out of 42 billion, the ones that we can confidently whack them without being sued for the time being, is 20 billion. We have some information about the others, but then I think unless we have further documentary evidence, it's difficult to say, because you are dealing with 1MDB, which will definitely sue you, because they have all the lawyers in the world. So out of 42 billion booked as liability as at 31st March 2014, 20 billion has been certified, proven that it is a government's exposure. If anything happens, you know, public money has to come in and so on. Okay. And we know in the next 2 or 3 months, there will be 2 further fund exercise that will further expose the public to higher debts. The first one is 1MDB through its subsidiaries is planning to raise a further 8 billion ringgit in the form of another round of bonds to finance the Jimah power plant that they got. You know, there's a Jimah power plant, and they have been planning to raise another 8 billion. That 8 billion will add to the 42 billion. And they have been trying to do an IPO, initial public offerings, for the last 1 year. I will explain why they were having some hiccups within. But words in the market is that they will finally have no choice but had to go and do the IPO, and when the IPO is done, it's your money and my money, because most probably it's the institutional buyers, publicly owned, you know, that have public funding, the EPF, the Tabung Haji, the PNB, the GLC banks, which most probably will end up buying this IPO and the shares. It sounds like a deja vu because we've heard it before with Felda Global Ventures. They say everything will be fine, and of course all the government-linked agencies have to buy it. These are all public money. But yes, 2 years, 1 year later, I think it has plummeted. It has lost about 30% plus of this value. Chances are, in all probability, it may happen the same way when the IPO happens. So, has the whole debate about why are we not doing anything about 1MDB, given that the whole of their liability, known so far at 42 billion, is going to be, it has been financed by public, and if anything happens, it represents an exposure to the public. Of course, Ahmad Maslan, and on Monday and Tuesday, how many people watch TV3? I do, you know, I still watch TV3. For the fun of it, of course. And if you are a politician and you want to see which issues are gaining ground, you have to watch TV3, because the rule of thumb is you can hammer the end continuously, but if there is not a squeak from TV3, means they are not affected. If suddenly you have a special prime time 15 minutes report on how good and beneficial 1MDB is, that means that it is really screwed up. And that happened last Monday. Last Monday, TV3, Bulletin Utama, prime time, dedicated 15 minutes to showcase how much 1MDB will make a difference financially to the country. This is the best brainchild of Najib, supposedly. So you kind of know. And on Tuesday, if you notice all the front page of the mainstream newspapers, the Star, I think NST, carried news one way or another, Berita Harian Utusan, explaining why 1MDB is in a strong financial position. And the argument that is being used over and over again, I will not go into the details, otherwise it's become accounting talk. But the argument, we need to know what are the arguments, especially when we talk to other people who may not have as deep a knowledge of the whole transaction. The argument is 1MDB is financially strong because its asset is 52 billion. So they're saying, look, the asset is 52 billion. Why are you making fuss about 42 billion debts? It has a lot of assets. It will be over. I mean, that scares me, because if they really believe in their own spin, we'll be dead. I mean, if the people in cabinet, if the finance ministry's people actually believe that you can measure how sound the financial position of an organization just by comparing debts against the assets, then, well, there will be Enron all over again. Yeah. My view has always been, and we have always pressed this issue with them, there are 2 or 3 real questions that have to be answered by Najib if Najib wants to convince the public that 1MDB is financially sound and will not pose a financial threat to the public in the future. Number 1 is we need to know the operational performance. If you are a good company, you will be good operationally. And I come from oil and gas. We always have this fear when it's just purely financial company, because you can't really see the operation and expertise that comes with it. If 1MDB is really a good company, then we need to know the operational performance of 1MDB so that we know that this is a company that will last operationally and therefore will continue to generate the revenue stream. Can anyone tell what does 1MDB do? Anyone?
Selling and buying land.
Well, they claim that's one of it. Okay. I think you are right. Basically the real, we don't know what 1MDB does. Sometimes it says that it wants to buy uranium mines. Sometimes it says that it wants to go to Mongolia. The other day it says that, I want to be a #1 company in energy. And then they said, we are a property developer. You can never tell. And the company which you don't know what they do is certainly a risky company. If they're not good at what they do, and if they start doing all this and none of it works, then certainly it's a big risk operationally. When it is a risk operationally, obviously it will also be a financial risk. And that's why we have to really dissect the financial performance of 1MDB in the last 5 years. Again, BN will say, why are you making fuss? In 2013, they make 643 million profit. 643 juta. They will go and tell the wanita UMNO, which believe the cow story in the first place, and they say, wow, 643 million, a lot of money, good. Of course, this wanita UMNO and so on didn't know that over the last 5 years, 1MDB has consistently revalued its assets. And that assets mostly is the prime land given by government in the form of Pandan Malaysia in Sungai Besi and Tun Razak Exchange in Tun Razak. So if you add back the revaluation of property, of investment property, you will see that their operating profit, so to speak, for the last 5 years, they have making operating loss. This is a company that had not had a single year of operating profit. If I'm an auditor, and I was an auditor, if I'm an auditor, among the first question we ask is the question of going concern. Is this company a going concern when the last 5 years they have not shown any single operational profit, and chances are with the kind of financial liability, and they don't know what they really want to do in the next few years, there is a risk that they will never hit operational profit. That's why I got the note. So let me cut it short. I think a lot of you here knows what it is. You can call it money laundering, you can call it Ponzi, you can call it a scam. And I would say that it's it's symptomatic of what Barisan Nasional thinks of Malaysians. They think that we are stupid. As simple as that. And they think that they can do this, and by making it a lot more complicated, and by hiding all the money trails all over the world, I could go and chase lembu and gemas. I can't go to Cayman's Island, you know? So hiding in Cayman's Island. Tony obviously cannot go all the way traveling to Switzerland, Hong Kong, all over this place trying to find this money. So what they do is that they make a complex trail of money going around. It's a round robin of money, but we don't know where the money is, what the money, how much the money is. And you can prove this by looking at the kind of people that they have brought and they have appointed or they entered into a JV to manage this 42 billion ringgit. The first venture, PSI, Petro Saudi International, supposedly a Saudi venture, nobody knows the guy. And after 2 years, there was not even a single oil and gas field. It's just called, the only oil and gas body is the name, Petro, that's all. There's no petrol, there's no oil and gas. So after 2 years, they have to restructure everything and exit, you know. And then see the next round of people they bring in. Bridge Partners. There's a small company in Hong Kong called Bridge Partners without even a proper website. And if you drill further, and has been documented and reported in all the financial dailies, even the principal officer of Bridge Partners had his share of trouble in the past, you know. This guy by the name of Lobo Lee, and of all the names, you have Jolo, you have Lobo, I don't know. You know, there's this guy by the name of Lobo Lee, who has been dragged into, who was once charged for embezzlement and misuse of financial license and so on. And then we know that, for example, the promissory notes is issued by a small Switzerland bank in Singapore. So if you see all this, apart from Goldman Sachs, all the rest of the players are questionable players who have been entrusted with about 42 billion of public fund. You know, if the company doesn't have track record, if the company is not churning profit, if the kind of people that the company works with are of questionable character, dekat Malaysia you call it what? You call it alung, you know. It's as simple as that. So okay, let me just sum up, because I'm sure you know we can take more questions. Yeah.
I think that is the joke is on us, being Malaysians.
Yeah, I was about to come to that. You know, there's a good thing about us, Malaysia. We are very positive even when we are screwed like this. I think we all know there is a scam. What we don't know so far is how much of the 42 billion is still there. We don't know. We don't know how much is in Malaysia, and when they say that 60% of the money from Cayman's Island has been brought back, we do not know which part of the money, whether it was the first tranche or the second tranche, because they just commingle the whole money. It's like making one big debt and taking another debt to cover the last debt. You know, gali lubang, tutup lubang, gali lubang, tutup lubang. In fact, a lot of people, and I share that sentiment, we feel, talking to people in the market and so on, we feel that they're just shifting the money around. And they will say, every time you press, you say, yeah, we are bringing 7 billion back. Of course, now you have 42 billion to play around. You know, if they still have 20 billion left of that 42 billion, they can still do this. You know, every time you press, they will say that, okay, the money is coming back. But wait when those debts mature in 10, 15, 20 years' time. Then we'll be in trouble. So, to sum it up, there is good and bad, you know. The good news is, and we have to be consistently positive to be in this country, the good news out of all this 1 MDB is Najib may go down with it. I think it may be the one thing that really finish him off, you know. Although I kind of miss, you know, not seeing Rosmah and Najib punya joke after that, you know. We have not had a single First Lady that was or is that entertaining in the last 20 years. So that could be the end of Najib, because I think it comes to a point when it's very difficult to hide 42, 50 billion debts anymore, and it has become an international obsession to uncover what is really 1MDB. That's the good news. Of course, the bad news is, as our friend pointed out, the joke is basically on us. You know, as much as we fear and we think that 1MDB will be insolvent, I hope it will never come to that. Because if any of the debts goes into default, Malaysian government has to step in, and it's not a small amount of money. It's not 250 million, it's not 100 million, it is 5 billion, it is 10 billion. When that happens, we will definitely be in severe financial trouble. The last time any country had to go through this was Argentina, and the kind of country and so on. A severe indebtedness that they have to negotiate with creditors to meet the debt obligation. So let's hope for the best, and that's why I think thank you very much for all who have turned up today, because it is very important for us to keep harping on this issue and making sure as many people as possible understand the real crux of the issue in spite of the complicatedness. They make it complicated so that we give up from understanding. But it is our duty to dissect it and make it understandable so that we can tell our folks, our friends, because we have to stop 1MDB. Not a single day should be left, because if they continue and take more debts, then every day is a bigger risk for us. So hopefully we'll stay on the ball, and hopefully one way or another we will be successful in closing down 1MDB in the way that we chase out Shahrizad out of cabinet. Thank you very much.